Hello, everyone. This is Belinda Carr. Welcome back to the Movers and Breakers podcast, where we dive into the world of construction and explore the stories of people and companies who are shaping the future of our industry. From the latest innovations to the challenges and triumphs of everyday professionals, we bring you the inside scoop of what's happening in construction. Today, I'm speaking with Baxt Ingui, architect and founder of the Passive House Accelerator. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I'm a huge fan.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Likewise, most people have heard of Passive House Accelerator, and they probably watch the weekly podcast that you and your team organize, and you'll have a couple of videos and a YouTube channel too. But your background is actually in architecture. You have a pretty established practice in New York.
Yeah. We do some work outside of New York, but a lot of work is in both Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens.
And you have worked at Baxt Ingui Architects for over 25 years in New York City. And it's kind of, when I first came across that on your LinkedIn profile, I was a little bit shocked because I worked in New York at Cloda Interiors. And you've heard of them? Okay. I've worked there for about 7 months for an internship, and then I was ready to leave. I was ready to move on. It's a pretty overwhelming city. And it feels like if you want to move up in the architecture world or interior design world, you have to move out. But you have stayed at the firm for over 25 years and it's worked out for you. So what was different about your experience?
So I graduated New York Tech out in Westbury in a recession and got a job at a place called Mogensen for the first year I was out of school. But I always wanted to be in the city. I spent most of my time as a kid growing up on Long Island in the city when I could. I knew where I wanted to be and where I wanted to spend my time. So when a job with Ben Baxt came up, I jumped in. And I was going to stay for a year. That's what most people do. Stay for a year, jump, move up to a next position somewhere else, learn about different firms. But the way Ben ran the office actually is the same way we run the office now, which is when you work there, you get to work to your ability. So whatever you're interested in, you get to do. If you like the design, if you're good at design, if you want to do more project management, you get to do it. And the opportunity was always there and it never left. And there was always room for growth. And Ben, probably 78 or 79 now, or no, I think he might be 80 soon. But Ben's still learning. Ben is still designing. Ben is still vibrant. In fact, probably in better shape than I am. And it's a great way to have that partnership.
But it takes a special kind of person to work in that environment. You have to be extremely self-motivated because you're talking about the freedom that the job offered you, but it can be easy to get into a rut in that kind of environment where you're not being pushed to move up. It has to come from you.
Yeah, I'm a relatively driven person, so and and quite hyper. So I think I definitely have ADHD, and it's always nice when you just don't take any drugs. You just do it all. You don't do one thing at once because it's too difficult to do that. So yeah, no, I've always been pretty motivated to do a lot of different things. I always wanted my own firm. Ben knew that. I think in my initial interview, I've always been pretty open about it, and always wanted to kind of control my own destiny. But what's happened at Baxt Ingui in terms of just the number, we're like 26 people right now, has been pretty organic. We never really wanted a firm that big. It's not really that big of a firm, but we really wanted to, we like being involved in our projects. We like being intimately involved. I love designing. If I could design and paint all day long, that's what I would do. And, I would say we're much more of a design firm than we are a technical firm and so forth. And what happened was we kept hiring people and the people who aren't good, kind of got weeded out. But some of the people who have been with us have been with us for over 20 years as well. And they're great. And they could easily have their own firm, but they're staying with us for the same reason I stayed. And it's a fun atmosphere. We get to work on each other's projects. Even the juniors who have come in are really, really talented. Some of them are so talented that I'm very happy I didn't come in when they came in. It's like a whole other breed right now. It's everybody knows everything, which is so funny about the way they're teaching in school now. So it's a fun environment. And Ben really started that off, and I've just kind of kept it going.
So you got into Passive House building and started Passive House Accelerator in 2019. But what lessons did you learn leading up to that point that that sparked this fire in you for sharing information about passive building?
So we've always had a pretty collaborative office. We work in kind of a design build way with a lot of the contractors we work with. We're a big fan of bringing the contractor in super early, like schematic design early,
Oh, wow.
and well, we're we always realize that they just make our projects better. Bringing in contractors early and having them design with you, having them work out the details with you, having, some of our contractors like wood studs, some of them like metal studs, some of them believe in this, some of them believe in that. And then so it winds up becoming their project, like it becomes our project. So when we wound up getting into Passive House, we started to realize just how much more important that level of collaborative working was.
It's important.
It just becomes even more important, and honestly, even more fun, because most of the time we're introducing our contractors to Passive House. They've never heard of it
Yeah.
before. They've been doing contracting for 20 years. I don't need to learn a new trick, but once they do, and it's still happening today, I mean, all they do is school me all day long about the better ways that we could do this, the better way we could do that. And then we're just continuously changing our master set. But the way I got into Passive House was I did a townhouse next to Sam McAfee and Ken Levinson. Ken was the architect, Sam was the contractor. And they were doing a Passive House and I was doing a typical house. They had one little tiny Mitsubishi in their house and an ERV, which I never heard of before. Um,
And
and
which
I
year
had
was
all
this?
this is about a decade ago,
Okay.
or more. And I have, all these mechanical units on the roof and a massive control system in the cellar and in-floor heating, and all this stuff. They didn't have any of those things. And I really made fun of Sam for like about a year. And Sam's great. He loves it and takes it in stride. And Sam took a lot of time and walked us through it. And anyway, that house worked out really well for Sam, obviously. I loved it. I fell in love with it. And so we hired Sam as much as we could. We hired him as a consultant. Architects never like being first. They always want to. First of all, I think we're lied to a lot. There's always someone selling some sort of snake oil that doesn't quite work the way they said it would. But seeing it work from both a contractor and architect, and then being able to hire one of them as a consultant, allowed our next project, which was Manhattan's first lead platinum Passive House. It was first Manhattan's first Passive House, but it was also the lead platinum. That client came to us wanting a platinum Passive House that was lead. We introduced them to passive. So
So passive house, for people who don't know, it's not just for residential construction. The term is kind of misleading because it's derived from a German word, but it can be passive building, it can be commercial buildings too. But your projects, are they mainly residential?
yeah, we do a lot of high-end residential, and we do historic homes that are all protected by landmarks. So
Okay.
I'd say out of the 10 or 12 that we have certified now, and we're working at least 10 now, um, I would say 90% of them are are protected. So all of our passive measures are inside the house; they're not outside. In fact, actually, you would walk into our houses, you would never know it was a passive house. You wouldn't even know what the term was. In fact, our clients don't very often know what it means or care. I mean, I think you've heard me maybe
Yeah.
describe how I convince the clients to do it, and it's not for the energy efficiency.
How do you
Um,
convince the clients to do it?
so, I mean, usually we're walking through these old houses and they're way past their shelf life. And I'm usually saying, letting them know that if they want a house that doesn't have bugs and dust, we can do a sealed house and it'll be a passive house. And if they want to get rid of the street noise in the city, we can do passive house windows. And if they want filtered fresh air 24/7, we could do an ERV because that's what we would do in a passive house. And then I keep walking through and I talk about some of the attributes, like they don't need heat ever, which is weird. And some of the other, they cut me off almost instantly. They're sold on bugs and dust. Um, eh, you know, People don't know in the high end residential market, at least, or any of the markets really, that they can have houses that are free of bugs and dust. They don't know that they can have filtered air, fresh air 24/7, so they don't ask for it. It's not in their wish list. But once they know it exists, like they're done. They're
Yeah.
in. They want it.
Why would you
But
turn it
whatever.
down?
Yeah, I'll take the house with all the bugs. Yeah, yeah. Give me that one. I want the house where the outside pollen makes its way in. So my wife doesn't even use her allergy medication in our house. And I'm in New York, it's snowing outside today,
Oh,
or it snowed yesterday. It's like 30 degrees outside, and my heat's still never been on. So, but the clients always think that they're going to live in a spaceship, or,
yeah.
something else is going to, I'm going to, solar collectors all over the place. They don't realize it's just better construction. And once the contractors learn how to do it, they actually can't not do it, because I'm on a bunch of houses that aren't quote unquote passive, and we're still doing all the thermal bridging measures where we're taking, making sure the cold air doesn't make its way in, and we're still doing a lot of that. And for those of you who don't know what a thermal bridge is, on this podcast, they probably all do. But right now this is pretty hot. In fact, I'm going to put it down, because it's a glass mug. But if it were
Typical
insulated,
double walled.
yeah, if it was insulated or typical like a thermos mug, well, I could hold it that way. But I felt the heat through it, so it's got no thermal breaks.
Yeah.
So anyway, but most of our clients just want a better house.
There are two things that come to mind when you tell that story. And one is the messaging, the way you spread the information or spread the word about passive building. Because if you dive into the technical side of it, it can get really overwhelming, can go over people's heads. So
Oh
if you
yeah.
just tell them about the benefits, break it down to the simplest advantages, then it's more acceptable to people. It gets people excited.
Oh yeah, and our clients, they don't want radiators. They don't want all these different things. Nobody wants control systems. Everybody's pretty excited when I describe what I consider to be a dumb house, because I don't need a control system if my heat's not on.
Yeah.
And in the summer and the spring or the fall, even if I'm putting my thermostat on 70 or whatever you like, and I just leave it. So that's all I've got to do. And so it really simplifies our life. People, in fact, we're living in such a crazy world. People want a simple life, and they just want a better house. They just didn't know they can get it. And passive house seems daunting. It just everything about it. So just creating creating a kind of a simple way of describing it is the way to go. I have actually made the mistake of not describing it that way before and getting kind of excited about the nuts and bolts, and people just don't do it. It's
Well,
amazing. It's
yeah.
weird. It's like they get turned off like instantly, and it's very hard to get them back.
When so most of the work that you do in New York, I assume they're renovations because there's limited free land available. Um, so is it more difficult to create passive buildings in retrofits as opposed to new construction?
I think it could be. So, one of the things that we learned in that first Manhattan townhouse is that we were doing passive house in a horrible way, and in an unscalable way. And what we learned is that we really needed to have a systematic approach that really got the sequence right of what you do and how you do it. And we've been trying to hone that systematic approach for a decade now. And our next project, we included a whole bunch of people in it. We do something called a contractor collective, which is something that everybody in the universe should steal, where we've required all of our contractors who compete with each other, who are all doing passive houses, to meet on a regular basis in each other's houses and to talk about what's going right and what's going wrong with the passive house projects that we're doing. And there's just nothing like getting a whole bunch of contractors together with the architect to tell them what they don't like about our details. So
How do you
last,
get people excited enough to do that? To meet up on a regular basis? And
well, yeah, I can tell you
or
right
is it
now,
just
we've
the
got
passion in
contractors.
each person's work?
Well, I mean, right now, so the first meeting was funny. So the first meeting was, we had only done it with two contractors, but I wanted, everybody's like, oh, how do you find contractors who do passive house? I would never do that. I mean, I would, but I mean, I love the contractors we've been working with. We've got relationships forever. I mean, I know who their kids are, and there's a certain amount of trust that's there. And they're great carpenters, and they love to build. And once you learn how to do passive house, you realize like some of this stuff's like really easy compared to especially all the other stuff they're doing. So what we learned is that they don't really want to learn it from me. They want to learn it from other contractors. So the first meeting was kind of weird. All the contractors were like milling around outside the job site. Nobody wanted to go in. These are guys who compete. In some cases, four of those contractors competed on that house. Three of them lost. And the one contractor who won it is now showing them his secrets. So they all know each other, but didn't really know each other. So we went in and everybody's kind of milling around and it's a little awkward. And all of a sudden, someone starts to show the problem that they found and all the stupid things they did and how they fixed it. And all of a sudden, the phones are coming out. and the pictures are coming out. And so the meeting was about an hour and a half long. It was supposed to be like a 15-minute meet and greet. The next meeting was about 2.5 hours long. It was about 30 people. The next one honestly was too big. It was like 70 people, 70 different. The
Wow.
contractors brought their subs. One guy brought his framing contractor. Another woman had her whole team with her as well. And uh, and it was really, it was just fun, and they're just picking apart our window detail and picking apart how we are waterproofing it correctly. And yeah, it's great for passive, but not this. And someone's talking about how we have to insulate our brick. And I mean, just pages and pages of great notes. And what we would do, the deal is they'd all get those notes, and they'd all get a copy of the details that they just helped us do, that they could use wherever they want, no matter what architect they're working with. And then it grew from there to us inviting a whole bunch of architects, some of which we compete with, and a whole bunch of other people who got interested. And then we started getting calls from contractors who don't even work with us, or like, listen, can I do a passive house with you? Because they want to be invited to these things because they're kind of fun. And we actually also moved them after the second meeting to the afternoon. We do them at 3 o'clock because we could all go to happy hour afterwards. So that has now created a whole bunch of friendships with all the contractors. They all know each other now. A lot of them are like sharing blower doors because you don't really need more than one. Some of them have shared crews when they got slow, which is also just
Wow.
bananas. It's just
Yeah.
bananas. And one of them shared their whole painting crew because they were very slow with a contractor who won that job and they didn't. And it just created a whole atmosphere of collaborative people who just want to work well together. And it's fun. And they realize that failing on the passive house project or the project they're doing costs them more money. And that's really their competition. The competition is not those guys or girls. It's the competition of money, because doing a passive house is a little risky. So if you can learn from all your peers and
Reduce
know
your
what you're
risk.
doing,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And then in our office, Amy, Isla, Will Connor, Frankie, they've all been. I work with a team of people who have been really instrumental in that. And then Kevin Brennan, who you probably know as well, who's done a lot of the contractor teaching for a lot of our contractors, has actually run a lot of those. And so I'm pretty lucky to be surrounded by people who can run those, who aren't me. Um, and um, it's been fun. It's a little addictive.
Your energy is so infectious. Just hearing you talk about all these meetings and how they're growing and you're developing all these relationships, it's incredible. And even you talked about you running, the importance of finding the right people, trusting them, and letting them run with an idea. That's how you run Passive House Accelerator. That's how it seems like you run it, because you cannot possibly run your business, run Passive House Accelerator, run another thing, because you're going to be spread too thin. So you have
Mhm.
found the right people to develop this continuous, like, I don't know how to describe it, but this continuous content for social media, whether it's the podcast, it's the articles, it's the web, YouTube videos. How did you manage to grow such an amazing team to run Passive House Accelerator? And what percentage of time do you dedicate to it?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you, by the way. So I will say the accelerator is really addictive,
Yeah.
and I could spend a lot of time on it, because the stuff that people see like on the podcast or on the weekly lives, or
It's
that's
a
fun.
tiny
What
fraction of the work that goes behind it.
And it's fun. The meetings they have and the pre-meetings, like those are just as much fun. So like some of the run-throughs they do, the run-through is like 15 minutes, and they're on the call for like 2 hours. And because a lot of times these are people like we like loved forever that we get to talk to. And so and we're learning from them. So I wanted to start the accelerator. This is probably almost 4 years ago now. Um, um, because of a few things. One is I was going to all these conferences and realizing that everybody had all these answers. It's like having, like, climate change is like this cancer, except for we know the cure. But like nobody's describing the cure to anybody, or describing this piece or that piece. They're all siloed. People are doing passive house supermarkets, passive house car dealerships, and they all want to share, which is so cool. So I wanted to continue that and have that happen.
On a central platform.
Passive House Accelerator was really created to aggregate a lot of different things that are already happening. I mean, there's just stuff that we're already addicted to. And I think we still can do a lot more to aggregate that stuff into one place so people can get links to it and find it. People who didn't already know it existed, but it's grown into a lot more than that. So I will say the Passive House Accelerator was horrible when I first started it. It is not what I do. I didn't care. I still wanted to do it. I funded it myself because I didn't want anybody to stop me. And it was done at a time when there were some warring factions of individuals who may have said, "Oh, you could do this, but you can't do that. You could do this, and you can't do that." And I'm like, I just wanted to put the pedal to the metal, and if it failed, I'd be cool. So, but it was horrible. I mean, it's just not what I do. And it was kind of growing here and there. It was kind of fun. But then I realized that Zach Semke was available, and it is what Zach Semke does. And I called him like, Zach, please do this with me. And the Passive House Accelerator that everybody knows now is at least it's probably more Zach's than it is mine. But it's also the whole team. So the way we're running it. And now we've got Mary James who jumped on from Passive House Buildings magazine. She jumped on a few years ago, and a whole bunch of our team members jumped on. We've got great writers, and the hosts are all fun. But the way we run that is, if we want to do it, we just do it. We just like literally the next day. We just don't care. I mean, it's just that we don't have to answer to anybody. We don't necessarily care if we fail a little bit, because we can always pull back on it. And we have. There's definitely things that we've done that haven't worked out the way we thought they would.
But you experimented with it. You wouldn't have known it would have failed if you hadn't tried it. Yeah.
We started a Discord channel. We realized only 6 people used it. We stopped it. So Dylan, my son, loved it though. But I'll give you a good example. The podcast, Matthew Cutler Welsh called Zach, I think, and he's like, listen, I like doing these podcasts. You want to do it together? And so we did it the next week. We just started it. The lives have been really cool. That came from Sean St. Amora and Monty Paulson. They were doing some actual lives in Vancouver, and then COVID hit, and they started to do them on Zoom. And then they called us like, listen, this is not something we want to run. It also would be great if more people did it. Can you do it with us or take it over? And we're like, yeah, let's go. And like 2 days later, we did our first live. And and then that has been so much fun. During COVID, we had 200 or 300 people on it a week, from everywhere. It kind of grew fast. We wound up doing a whole bunch of things where we were doing people's conferences online because people couldn't travel to them. And honestly, that kind of got me through COVID. That was great.
Do you feel a certain amount of pressure to constantly create content for Passive House Accelerator, to constantly grow it? Or do you entrust the people you have hired or the people you work with to run with it and to innovate?
I mean, the better way to answer that for me is, if I didn't show up for the next year, the Passive House Accelerator would be just fine. Zach's great, Mary's great, Ilka, who's now hosting some of our podcasts, it's great. Matthew Walsh is great. There's so many good people. Jay, one of the writers. There's so many good people involved in the accelerator. And the way we've done it is everybody can kind of run with what they want to. And we've got a lot of other people who also have their own thing going on involved. And the way we run it is they're able to just do what they want. And because of that, I don't feel really any pressure to on a weekly basis personally. Having said that, the team meets weekly and they make it happen. And it's obviously, you do it. It's not as easy as it looks. And we're planning further in advance now. Now we're going to do it. We're going to start getting AIA credits for some of these, which we probably should have done a while ago. And it's a lot of work, but we've got we've got Kim, who's working with us now, who handles a lot of that back end stuff, which and some of the front end stuff now too. And it just helps. So it's an incredible team that just works, directed by Zach. So it lets me be involved in the fun stuff I want to be. I can kind of helicopter in, hopefully not say stupid things, helicopter back out, and lets me stay focused on the architecture firm, which is really essential. I would let it all go for the architecture firm. It's really, A, I love it. B, it's kind of what I do. So, so it's nice to have both.
I don't know if you've realized this, but you probably have realized this. You being at the firm for so long and being in an environment that you really appreciated, an environment that nurtured you and allowed you to explore, that's what you've created at Passive House Accelerator. You're creating an environment where people can grow and do what they want. You have trusted them to explore different ideas, fail if they need to, and they're not afraid of, they're not getting stuck in a rut.
Yeah,
because
no,
you've created
thanks.
that
Yeah.
same environment.
That's interesting. I haven't really thought about that, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you're right. And what's nice about it is, I don't even think we might be a little bit too comfortable failing, but we actually would like to fail fast if we're going to fail, and then I think we'd probably kind of publicly talk about what we did wrong and what we want to do right. So, like for example, we just moved everything from nighttime to daytime,
Yes.
which was kind of interesting. Our numbers went up, which is great, but we debated that kind of publicly. We just changed the way we do the whole format of the lives, where every week is a new thing. We're doing 40 under 40 now because we got some really good. Well, the one thing I love about the community, I think, some days is they're really, really particular. So they definitely tell you what they think. So we've learned, like, listen, there's too many, more established people on, get some younger people in. We need more diversity. So what which is all true. And so part of some of the pressure we do feel is actually to truly take action when we get that, because it's so easy to talk about it. And
Yeah.
and you just have to take action and try this, or then try that, or try this and try that. And so Zach's been great with that. The team's been great with that. We just hired a videographer, which is a huge thing, and people will start to see the benefit of that pretty soon.
Yeah.
And his name is Alex, and he's so talented and has the ability to edit a lot of what we do, edit some of what other people do, and bring it in, but also has the ability to film both on location and simulcast out, so we can do both. And so I'm pretty excited about it. So it's constantly growing. And I guess what I would say maybe about me personally is I feel a tremendous amount of um, pressure is the wrong word, and responsibility is the wrong word, but drive to further building better and helping to solve that. It's just,
That's
I
just
feel like,
personal, I guess, personal pressure you put on yourself.
yeah, I feel like, I've seen behind the, the curtain at Oz. I know the solutions out there, and it's just as many people who can learn it. These are really simple lessons, and they can't be unlearned. So the more I can help do that, I feel a little bit of pressure to do that now, just because, we all know where we're headed.
Yeah.
And for me, it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. It doesn't matter if like gas versus coal. It doesn't matter to me. These are all really, really interesting debates that are unnecessary. Nobody wants to pay for heat. Zero people.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants an unhealthy house. Zero people. So let's just do those. Let's just do that, and stop debating those items. So just knowing that, and knowing that there are people who know how to do it, and some of it's just kind of getting the people that we love on,
Yeah.
and learning from them.
So you talked about your main passion is your architecture firm. That is who you are. You are an architect, you are a designer, that's what you love to do. Are there a couple of projects that come to mind where that really stand out, or that you learned the most number of lessons from, and you love sharing stories about that with the rest of the industry?
That's a great question. Yeah, definitely. It is funny as you ask it. So many projects come to mind. Maybe my own house was a fun one, where I didn't have anybody who could tell me we couldn't have lots of gatherings and couldn't try stuff. So we did a window installation seminar here on site. We did an air sealing seminar here on site. And we were able to try a whole bunch of different things. So I have LVLs on one floor. I have existing joists that are sistered on another floor, and above me, I've got metal joists, and we're just trying different things. So just because we could do it, and nobody can say no. And so maybe that's been a fun one. My brother-in-law, Max Michelle, was the contractor, and a lot of my friends were the ones doing the work. So they were in, they let us do it, and we're kind of interested in what was going on. The one we're working on right now is that's a lot of fun for us, is Engine 16, which is a firehouse that we're converting to residential in Manhattan. It's a NYSERDA Buildings of Excellence project. NYSERDA has been a huge game changer. I'm so happy I'm in New York, and we're
Can you
doing work
explain a
in New
little bit
York.
about that?
Yeah, so NYSERDA, the New York. Um, I should look up what NYSERDA means, but NYSERDA has been incredible in creating a whole bunch of programs that are helping to push better buildings. And it's not so different from what they did in Brussels, where they knew the code had to change. They knew people had to build better buildings, so the government funded several projects as long as they shared all their details, all their answers, all the metrics, and opened it up to the community to show them how. And so the Buildings of Excellence awards, they're on their third round. They're about to actually, I think, in the next few weeks, announce who the winners of the next round, and it's all different project types. So ours are historic masonry retrofits. Another one that won a nice sort of award is a prefab from the ground up project we joined upstate, which is kind of fun. So we do all types of projects, by the way, now. And but what's nice about the nice sort of setup is that it's being designed in a way where they get all the data and they can share it broadly, and they're really helping you to share it broadly. And the accelerator works with them a bit on this as well. We help to share it on the accelerator too. But it is one of the things that for me is it works with my personal mission quite a bit, because they want people to share it, and they're really tapping into a community in New York of people who are already into it. They were into it way before it's becoming code. People are like, the code doesn't have to change. It's so stringent. There are already developers who are going all electric voluntarily. They're already doing high performance buildings voluntarily. Developers who are holding the buildings and renting them have realized that if I don't need heat and I can put that into the rental cost in my incredibly competitive market in New York, I make more money. They're all learning these things already. So like the whole code change, it's very similar to what happened in Brussels. By the time it really changes, the community's already around that's already kind of doing it. It's just not a big deal. And it's really nice. And the team that's there is great to work with. So we're pretty lucky. But anyway, coming back
Yeah.
to, sorry, go
And
ahead.
kind of ties into your belief in knowledge sharing, like with the seminars that you hold, with all these contractors and architects, and you believe that if you're going to help the construction industry move further, we have to be open about the lessons learned. We have to share knowledge. It's not something we need to hide.
Yeah, and also I would say, even if I was looking at it selfishly, which of course I do sometimes, and everybody does, every time we've had an open house, even when competing architects or contractors or some people come in, we learn so much. And a lot of people are like, yeah, but what if I put my details out and they're horrible? And honestly, some of the details we put out have been not great. And but what's nice about it is you learn what wasn't great and you just change them. And it's like you change them like the next day. AutoCAD, it's not a big deal. And
Exactly.
and it's just it's kind of fun and free, and we've only benefited from it as an office. We've not we've there's no negative that I can think of, both from a business development standpoint as well as just kind of doing good by the environment and bringing more people into it. But Engine 16 is a fun project. It's a project where we're getting to do lots of other things, like keep a lot of the cool historic stuff that was in the firehouse. We're working with a contractor, R. Sutton, who really does it well, a client who's totally into it, and where we're keeping tin ceilings, old floors, hose hooks, and we're reusing it all in that project. We're also taking stuff that like we've taken off of other projects and putting it into the house. As a firm, we've been into
Other
that
historic
forever.
projects?
Yeah, yeah. So like we took the
Ah,
fire escape off another house, and we're using the fire escape stairs
okay.
in this one to get to one of the lofts. We do that in our office a lot. Ben, my partner, has been into that for quite a while, and we like to try to. I mean, when we really get into uh, you know, what's the best way to build and embody carbon, but the best thing we can do is just not throw it out.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
and maybe even keep it in place. So a lot of our houses we're keeping the existing joists. A lot of the other houses where we're not, where we're using those joists somewhere else, the floor somewhere else. It's amazing what you can reuse, and honestly, how interesting it can make the next project. It's kind of fun.
It kind of gives you constraints for the next project too, in a weird way. It's like, oh, I have these items that I can use in here. Let me maybe cater the design around these items that I have.
Yeah,
It's very interesting.
it's fun.
Your energy, like I said earlier, is so infectious, and I
Thanks.
really appreciate you sharing all this and what you're doing for the industry. But I have a question for you. Architecture is an extremely tough industry. I mean, it is tough to earn a living in the industry. It's tough to climb up the ladder. is one of the reasons why I try to find a career path kind of outside architecture, which a lot of my peers have done too. But you have found your own path. You've carved a niche in the industry. You've created a name for yourself. What advice do you have for a young architect, a young professional that's trying to do something similar, trying to find their voice in architecture?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few different ways of looking at it. One is when you take a job, take one where you're going to learn. Although money is important, um, make sure that you're learning something you think you can use in the future, and make sure you don't get pigeonholed in that one thing. And if you're not continuing to learn multiple things, leave. Don't stay. Doesn't matter if they give you a raise. You have to continuously learn. And I think about this for the people who are with us as well. As I put it to people when we do a kind of our yearly reviews with the people that are in the office, if we can't pay you enough to be competitive, you should leave. But also, much more importantly, if you're not learning more, if you're not growing as an individual in the direction you want to grow in, you should go find a place where you can do that. I would say, especially as you're really young, where you have maybe less expenses, you will, even though the expenses seem like they're real. But as you grow older and you've got a family and other things happen, the expenses become even more real. I would say focus on skill sets more than you do salary. That would be my first, and that is what I definitely did do. Um, and then I guess the other is learn outside of the firm. I've always been pretty interested in. We're lucky in New York. This is a lot of places to learn, and there's a lot of lectures that are always going on. But now they're all online, so which is cool. So there's all these, different, the podcasts that kind of describe things, trying to learn something for 15 minutes a day, but they're real. Try to learn something for 15 minutes a day and do something that's totally outside of your field. It's again, kind of Ben Baxt advice that he gave me a long time ago, which is go hang out with people who aren't architects, please. Which is, it's just so important. Just, we architects, you see everything like this, but the world's much more than this. It's that, or you don't even have hands. So it's just just get out of your bubble, learn more things, and just keep trying to learn. I think would be my biggest one. Again, we're lucky. New York's relatively busy. I got lucky because I'm working with with Ben, who is also interested in it. I think there are a lot of firms out there where you get some really good experience, but they might be more limiting. I would also say go work there, but leave. Work there, get what you need out of it. They obviously know what they're doing if they're limiting you, and don't be bashful about it, and ask for a slightly different setup. I'll give you a great example. We hired somebody who had 7 years of incredible experience at a really great firm. We realized after interviewing him that he'd really been detailing fire stairs for like 4 years. And he knew how to do it. Like he was good. Like he knew how to do that. Like he didn't know anything else beyond that. And he was really leaving because he was trying to branch out, and he did. I've actually kept in touch with him, and he's doing just fine. But it would have been hard to hire him, and he probably should have left 3 years earlier. But they pay well. They make it kind of exciting. And you've just got to remember that if you're not continuously learning,
you're not moving forward. You're moving backward.
Yeah. And then I would say most of those firms, if you really made that point, they'd move you to a different spot. Yeah. If you're good at what you do, be vocal.
Yeah. That's excellent advice. Thank you so much, Michael. That's good advice for young people and even older people like myself.
and me, I have to continuously think about it too, by the way. It's so easy to give other people advice. And I'm thinking, by the way, while I'm saying it, I'm like, when was the last time I did a learning thing for 15 minutes? So I'll try that tomorrow. So.
I think you're doing enough. I think you don't have to be so hard on yourself. You're juggling a lot of things. I'm sure you're learning something new every day. Thank you so much, Michael. Once again, link the podcast and link your website in the description. If people want to learn more about the Passive House Accelerator, do you have an Instagram account?
Yeah, you can go to Passive House Accelerator on Instagram, or go to passivehouseaccelerator.com on the web, and we're on YouTube as well.
All right. Thanks once again, Michael. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.